All right, today we're diving into a story that is just incredible. It's about sheer willpower, a champion forged in the middle of a conflict, whose journey ends in, well, total and utter dominance. This is the story of how Novak Djokovic became a true titan of tennis. So let's start with just a number. 24. That is the all-time record for men's Grand Slam singles titles. It's a number that's almost hard to wrap your head around, and it puts Novak Djokovic at the very, very top of the mountain.
But here's the thing. As massive as that number is, it's really just the last page of the book. The real story, the journey he took to get there, that's what really defines the man.
To really get it, let's go back in time to 2007. Look at this guy. This is a young, fiery Novak Djokovic in his very first major final. He was obviously talented, but he was still living in the huge shadows of legends like Federer and Nadal. Back then, nobody, and I mean nobody, could have predicted what was about to happen next. And to understand that rise, you have to start right at his unlikely beginning, where a champion was made, not on some perfect, pristine court, but in the middle of a conflict. So Djokovic was born in Belgrade back in 1987, right before everything started to unravel in Yugoslavia. His childhood was literally shaped by the wars and the NATO bombings in the 90s. And while his parents were trying to make a living running a fast food business, he was working on his game in the most unbelievable place, a drained, empty swimming pool that they'd turned into a tennis court, just so he could be safe.
And then came this moment. This is when the world really sat up and took notice. In 2008, at just 20 years old, Djokovic wins the Australian Open. Now, to get how huge this was, you have to remember that for the 3 years before that, every single major was won by either Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal. Djokovic didn't just win a trophy, he completely shattered their stranglehold on the sport.
That win, well, it was the spark. It lit the fuse on an entire decade of pure dominance, a time where Djokovic went from being a contender to a relentless, unstoppable machine. And his rise is what really solidified one of the most legendary eras in any sport ever, the Big Three. For the better part of 2 decades, these 3 guys, Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, just pushed each other to heights nobody thought was possible, completely rewriting the record books as they went. His explosion really culminated in 2011, a year that many people call one of the single greatest seasons in the history of tennis. I mean, look at this. He won 3 of the 4 majors, a record 5 of the huge Masters titles, and against his 2 biggest rivals, Federer and Nadal, he had a mind-blowing record of 10 wins and 1 loss. He was just untouchable. But he wasn't finished. Not even close. Between 2015 and 2016, he did something that's just almost unthinkable in today's game. He held all 4 major titles at the same time. People call it the Noel Slam. He was the reigning champion of Wimbledon, the US Open, the Australian Open, and finally, the French Open, all at once. And that's the shot. That's the moment. Winning the French Open in 2016 didn't just seal the Noel Slam. It also meant he'd completed the career Grand Slam, winning every major at least 1 time. It was the peak of a lifelong mountain climb. But you know how it goes. What goes up must come down. Just as he reached the absolute summit, his body started to betray him, and that led to a fall, and then one of the most spectacular comebacks the sport has ever seen. So in 2017, this elbow injury that had been bugging him for years finally just became too much to handle. It crippled his game. His results started to slip, and in the end, he had to shut his entire season down early just to try and recover. And his fall from the top was dramatic. By the middle of 2018, his world ranking had crashed all the way down to 22. Now, for a guy who had spent years and years at number 1, this was like falling off a cliff. It was his lowest ranking in more than a decade. He finally decided to have surgery, which was a choice he had put off for a long time. When he came back, he said something really simple, but so powerful. He just said, "After 2 years, finally I can play without pain." And that physical relief just unlocked everything for him again. And just a few months after being ranked 22nd in the world, he did the impossible. He stormed through the field and won Wimbledon in 2018. The comeback was complete. It was just a stunning, unbelievable display of resilience. So, with his body finally healed and his motivation back stronger than ever, Djokovic started the final chapter of his career, chasing immortality by breaking every single important record in sight. And the numbers he's put up since then are just staggering. A record 428 weeks as the world #1 player. A record 8 times finishing the entire year ranked #1. He's the only man ever to win every single Grand Slam at least 3 times. And, of course, that incredible record of 24 major titles. But yeah, his path wasn't always smooth. There were some pretty big hurdles. In 2022, his decision not to get the COVID-19 vaccine led to him being deported from Australia, which stopped him from defending his title. It was a huge story that sparked a worldwide debate that went way beyond the tennis court. But he just kept on finding new peaks to climb. In 2024, he finally captured the one huge prize that had always escaped him, an Olympic gold medal. Winning in Paris meant he completed the career Golden Slam, that's all 4 majors plus Olympic gold, and joined a very, very exclusive club. But for my money, this might be the most telling statistic of all. Just look at how he did against his greatest rivals. He has a winning head-to-head record against all of them, against Nadal, against Federer, against Murray. In what most people agree is the golden era of men's tennis, he consistently came out on top. So what's the secret? How did he dominate so much? Well, his whole game is incredible, but experts often point to one shot as the key. As Coach Todd Martin put it, his return of serve is way better than any other return of serve ever. And I mean way better. Think about that. It's a weapon that just diffuses the biggest serves in the game and immediately puts his opponents on their back foot, turning their biggest strength into his first attack. Which, brings us right back to where we started. From a kid in a war-torn country to the undisputed statistical king of tennis, with nearly every single major record now in his name, has Novak Djokovic finally, once and for all, ended the debate for who is the greatest tennis player of all time.